We're talking today with Mr. Thomas York of Wyoming, Michigan. The interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. All right, now Mr. York, can you begin by giving us some background on yourself? Where were you born, for instance?
I was born in Baltimore, Maryland in July of 27.
And did you grow up there?
No, we moved to the state of Oklahoma in about 1929. I was in Oklahoma till 1941. My dad primarily worked oil fields during the Depression and tough times. Although my mother was a Grand Rapids school person and she taught school in Grand Rapids. So in 41, my dad and mother decided, for what reason, they didn't confer with me, but they decided to move back to Michigan, and we ended up in Wayland.
Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about life in Oklahoma there in the 30s. What do you remember about that?
It was interesting. I was barefoot for the first day of spring to the last day of fall. We lived in a place called Britton, Oklahoma. It was our home, our owned home, which was by Wiley Post Airport. My dad was a pilot in the First World War, so I spent a lot of time at the airport with him. We were about a mile from this airport, and Will Rogers also. Now, I met them, not personally. They came in a restaurant while I was there in their flying togs, and I was just thrilled. I thought, these were our idols in Oklahoma. It was a flying country.
Right.
And
now, did your father still get to fly, or did he just hang around the airport?
Well, he did until the plane caught fire and my mother grounded him. They gassed it up and they were taking off, and he didn't get hurt. But with 4 boys and another one coming, she said that was enough. And no, I didn't. He didn't fly anymore.
And what kind of work was he doing?
Well, when he first got there, he was with General Motors. He went around. The reason he went there was to set up service schools for the new dealerships and train mechanics and so forth. He was he had a 5th grade education. Born in Chicago. Came to the farm in Michigan, went to school for 5 grades, and went to work. During the war, he taught at General Motors Institute, diesel engineering to primarily officers training and Chinese officers. The reason diesel, because in the oil fields, he told them he was a diesel mechanic, which he had never seen one, but he was a very natural mechanic. So he got the job. And he taught during the war, and afterward, then he set up a small business in Wayland, and farmers. He had a bottle gas business and a small tractor agency. And my mother taught school in Wayland. She taught the country school during the war.
All right. Now, did you moved up to Michigan then before Pearl Harbor?
Yes.
So just a little bit before,
yes.
So in 41
Yep.
then. All right. Now, in that time period there, 40, 41, before Pearl Harbor itself, did you have any awareness of what was going on in the world?
Well, obviously, there's no TV, and radios were scarce. We knew a little bit about, war in Europe, yes, we knew quite a bit. Japan, we were already being told and worried about the possibility of having problems. I don't remember specifically, but I know there was some trouble in China, and things didn't look good. And if you read the history, you knew Billy Mitchell said we were going to be attacked by the Japanese at Pearl Harbor in December on a Sunday morning, and he was right. He didn't have the exact date, but he was right in that. So yeah, we knew about it.
Okay. Now, were you learning about that in newspapers or in school, or?
Primarily in school, history books, although the history books weren't teaching about Billy Mitchell at the time. I think in the civics class, we got probably our most information, which was old information. Nothing was new. And it was censored heavily. If you saw anything that was what we would call television or live today, was at Pathé News at the theater. They would show some war scenes, never Americans being hurt or killed.
And of course, before Pearl Harbor, that wasn't usually too much of an issue.
No, we saw some on Germany. We saw some information about Germany. We knew that there was going to be a problem there. Although there were a lot of people saying, "Stay out of there. We're away from them. Don't go."
Right. Right. Now, of course, then Pearl Harbor happens. Do you remember how you heard about that?
On the radio. I think my folks were I was pretty young. I think my folks were more attuned to what was going on. In school, of course, right away we picked up on it, and also we saw a big bunch of seniors starting to sign up to join the service. It was very patriotic. All of us couldn't wait till we got old enough to sign. Well, not all of us, but many of us wanted to go into the service, and so then we followed it as close as we could by mail from the GIs from Wayland. They were over wherever they were at in the Pacific or in Europe, and we kind of followed the war through their eyes, which was interesting. And gee, it's like I say, school didn't teach too much about it, but the news and the newspapers probably and radios where we got most of our Roosevelt's fireside chats and so forth.
Right. Now, when it started, did you figure it was going to be over before you were going to be old enough to get there?
That's a good question. I really don't even know if I thought about that. I probably thought it would not be over. I thought I would be going in. But I'm not positive. I don't remember exactly. But I do know when I was 16, I went down to enlist, which I showed you the enlistment papers, and they accepted you then. If you passed the written exam, you went to Detroit, had a physical, sworn in, went back to school, or stayed in school till you graduated or turned 18. And of course I was 17 when I graduated. And then you went into the service for the duration plus 6 months.
Okay. Now, at the time you signed up, did you have to have a parent signature as well?
No.
Okay.
No. I went down and signed up. You did not have to. Some men, I don't know of any, I don't personally know, but a lot of them did sign up as early as 14 or 15 and lied their age. If I thought I could have got away with it, I probably would have lied my age to get in because I wanted to fly. And once I found I got the cadets, I couldn't wait to leave, but I had to wait that senior year out before I could go.
All right. So when did you actually get to go off for training then?
I was called to active duty July 1st, 45. And I was in a squadron, they called it Squadron I. It's basically a basic training group at Biloxi, Mississippi, at some say Biloxi, I say Biloxi, Keister Field.
Right.
And
what can you tell me about the training program down there?
Well, the basic training was very strong on physical training. The Air Force was much more in that than rather than marching and shooting. We did a lot of marching, a lot of cross-country running, but primarily physical training. And it was great for me because I played a lot of sports and I was in great shape, so it was like soup.
Of course, you were in Mississippi in July.
Yeah.
And coming down from Michigan.
Didn't bother me.
I guess you'd been in Oklahoma all that time.
It didn't bother
so
me.
Wasn't
You're young. The weather doesn't bother you as much. The only time it bothered you if they had a uniform of the day. If it was a rainy day, they'd fall out with boots and raincoat. Raincoats were rubber. It was hot. You sweated under that more than if it stood in the rain, so you might as well left the raincoat off. That was kind of I don't think we wore them more than once.
Right. Now, how long did you actually spend in Biloxi?
I left Biloxi I'm trying to remember exactly. I went to, I re-enlisted. I was enlisted in the duration of 6 months. I went through some of the pre-flight school, and they were starting to discharge them because they really didn't need them. So I was eligible for the draft. So rather than do that, I re-upped or re-enlisted in the regular Army with my enlisted serial number. So I got a discharge from the Air Force, went back in as a regular Army Air Force. And then that ended my training. I didn't want to be a mechanic, which would have been the next thing. I wanted to go on with life. I just wanted adventure. So I signed up, and I didn't know where they were going to send me. They sent me to Greensboro, North Carolina, to Kilmer to train how to get on and off a ship if it goes down, and then New York and shipped out.
All right.
And that all happened quite fast in a period of less than a month.
So when did you leave New York then? When did you ship out?
I'm going to guess it probably was in October, November, before Christmas, because I spent my first Christmas in Italy.
What kind of ship did they put you on?
Okay, that was a good one. That was an NYU Victory. Never forget that one. It was V-hulled. As I recall, and this, I've always said this, and I think I'm pretty close right, we had bunks that were like in a pipe and they were strapped in and about this far apart. You couldn't roll over. You put your duffel bag underneath there, 18 high, one hole. I don't know if you've heard this before or not, but it was a small ship. I think we had 900 troops and it was packed. After the first night and somebody got sick, I slept on deck. Wasn't supposed to, but I had a lifeboat. So I could, because I just didn't want to be around when the guys were sick.
Right.
Food, extremely scarce. They told us don't carry anything on, that a PX would open up on a ship. Well, they didn't. They had no PX. And it just was, for lunch, you'd get a cup of soup and 2 crackers. That's not much. And both breakfast and supper were pretty meager. I think we went to, down the hole we were passing up, they did have some fruit. Oranges one time, we slipped a crate over to the side so we could have a couple fresh oranges.
Right.
But it was an adventure, 31 days. Casablanca first, then Naples. And it was the northern route, which is a rough route. You say you sit on the deck because you had nothing else to do with a bunch of guys, and hang your feet over. And if you didn't move your head, you'd look straight down, and you'd look straight up. And if you got tired of that, you could look this way and go straight down and straight up.
All right.
Nothing.
Okay. Now, what I sort of get our dates right. You said you actually reported in July of 45.
I actually reported in August.
In August, but a 45. So right as
The July
war was
1st was my technical. I was in the service in that date.
Okay.
They
So
just had called me out.
So at this point, this is after the war is over now.
It's
that you're
after the
shipping
war's over.
But they were still shipping a lot of guys to Europe at that
Oh
point.
yeah, and even after me. I mean, they've been going on for a long time afterwards.
Okay, because that's something that people are really not aware of. You figure, okay, you get to VE Day and you leave some guys there for occupation, send the rest of them back home, and pack some of them off to Japan. You don't really think about sending more men out to Europe later on.
You went by your uniform, where you guessed, because they never told you where you're going. If you had a winter uniform, usually you were going to Europe. If you had a summer uniform, you were usually going to the Pacific. It was strange how that worked. We knew when we got to Greensboro or at Camp Kelmer, we were going to Europe.
Right.
I don't even know if I knew we were going to Italy until after we were on the ship.
Now, on that voyage, okay, so did you have some storms or rough seas in the process? Okay.
That's why I was saying you sat still, you could look straight down, straight up.
Yep. All right.
I don't get seasick, so it didn't bother me. There's a lot of them that did.
Sure. Okay. And do you remember going through the Straits of Gibraltar?
Yes. The surprising thing there to me was, being a young kid, and I'd traveled some because where we lived, but not really much, that you could look at the Rock of Gibraltar and see the African coast at the same time. It's that narrow. And that I do remember the merchant marines on there got paid more for going through there because it was a dangerous area with submarines and torpedoes. Even though the war was over, there was still some scare about it.
Yeah, and there were still mines around.
Yeah.
And right close to the Straits of Gibraltar in particular, near Naples, you might get a lot of them.
Yeah. And the ship was Army Transportation Corps. They had more ships in the Army Transportation Corps than the Navy did, according to what I've heard.
Could also explain why the food was so bad.
Pardon?
It could also explain why the food was so bad. The Navy was supposed to have good food.
The Navy did have good food. I played basketball on a carrier in Naples Harbor, and the food was, they took us to food afterwards. It was great.
Yeah, but you got stuck with the Army. All right. Now, when you went to Casablanca, was that just a very brief stop and then you went on?
A brief stop, one day.
Did you get to go off the ship?
No.
Okay.
Well, again, looking, we were watching the dock and the thing. The only thing that I remember about Casablanca that struck me was a guy that looked like he'd come out of the Bible, the long robe with a goatskin water. And I thought, gee, I thought that was ancient, But that struck me. I think that's the only thing I remembered, that plus trying to get cigarettes over the side of the boat, selling them for money.
All right. And then you get into Naples. What was your first impression when you got there?
City on a hill. We landed on a sunken freighter, which was a platform for us, and look at Mount Vesuvius. And we were stationed. We immediately went to a repo depot. They call it, where they search out and send you somewhere, which was the old, going to be World's Fairground. It never came about, but it was going to be. We were there probably I'm going to guess a week, 2 weeks. Then I got assigned to Caserta.
Okay. And they just have you in tents there?
Tents.
Okay.
Yeah, in tents. In Italy, unless you were on a military base, you didn't find a wooden building. On a military base, you would.
Okay.
Or a Quonset hut or something, that type thing.
Okay. And in that week there outside of Naples, did you just sit in camp and wait for something to happen?
Yeah, that was typical Army, hurry up and wait.
Right.
Yeah, you sat in camp and you waited for it to happen.
Okay.
And
Now
when they decided where you're going, you went.
Okay. And you're getting there, that's sort of end of the year. Was it cold and wet, or was the weather okay then?
Naples is a little bit like Georgia, Alabama. So it's warmer, so it was quite nice. I think we had snow one time while I was there, and it was very moderate and no problem to me being from Michigan. And I mean, nobody there could get around the Italians, but it was very unusual.
Right.
It was cool, but not cold.
Okay. All right. Now they take you over to Caserta. Now, where is Caserta relative to Naples?
I'm going to guesstimate the mileage. I'd say 18 miles inland.
Okay.
Now that's approximately. Caserta was the Allied headquarters command at the time. Had both British and American troops there, plus a big German prison camp. We were stationed in the castle. Well, if you've seen, I have a picture at home, a castle in the middle. That football picture is outside the castle where we were practicing. There were 2 rows of buildings on each side. One side we had our medical detachment and our barracks. The other side was barracks again and our mess hall. But it was in the better part of the Caserta. It was a special area. Very beautiful area too, by the way. Unique.
Now, what duties did you have once you got there?
Well, actually ended up, because of all things, I learned how to type in high school. So I ended up as a clerk in the medical office. So my responsibility were the reports, keeping track of whatever came in, whether it was pneumonia, cuts, whatever it would be, ordering supplies for them. Then the first sergeant became a lieutenant. I took his job acting to march the guys, and it was a bunch of fun. We had pharmacists, we had lab techs, and we had, I think we had x-ray too, but I'm not positive on that, I don't remember. So I was kind of the radar MASH type thing. I was a kid, I was only 18, and could type.
So you're kind of running the place and looking after things.
That made you a clerk typist.
Right, sure did. All right, what was daily routine like for you there?
It was pretty routine. Everything was in probably 5 copy or 6 copy. You had to bang a typewriter to get every copy. That's military for you. You had to just say call, and you just. It's kind of hard to explain. I mean, it's just like working in the office here, I suppose.
Sure. There's a certain hour when you're supposed to report.
Yeah, right,
and you kind of work
You're basically,
during the day.
you're 8 to 5, whatever it was there. I don't remember. And our billets were right in the same room or the same building. So all we did is walk from our barracks into the office. It was there. We had a pharmacy in there too.
Okay. What kind of relationship did you have with the officers or the people above you?
That was interesting. My CO was a captain. Captain Joseph I. Sofer. I'll never forget his name. A blonde, curly-haired guy. Very nice guy. In fact, we kind of double dated, as it was in that picture there. He had a girl and I had an English girl. I didn't know this. I'm not very smart. As a young kid, didn't know much, but I found out after he left. He left before I did, shortly before. He was from Chicago. That he was a Jewish man. I just never knew it. Sofer, S-O-F-F-E-R, I suppose I should have, but it wasn't a super guy. Super guy. We had Dr. Claver, who I think was from Zealand. We had 3 other Dr. Matthews. I had a couple more doctors. It was a pretty big dispensary. We had quite a few doctors there. And then we had a captain, and then the first sergeant became a second Louis, and I took his place. That was Smitty. And he really, I'm kind of a rebellious, so when he became an officer, I still called him Smitty, and he did not like that. He was lieutenant.
Did the
Second Louis.
right, but did the other officers, were they very much on rules and regulations, or were they fairly casual about stuff?
The one captain we had in the office, I don't even know why he was there. He sat at his desk and all day long. I mean, I don't know what he did, to be honest with you. I don't know what he did. He was just there, and the lieutenant was about the same thing. He just moved up, and I did the work for him. And then the rest of the medical staff was medical staff, and they worked. I mean, their trade, and they were very good doctors. And they were all nice, and they weren't extremely military.
Yeah.
They're much like the Air Force officers, where they were your buddy more than your officer. I say buddy, I want to use that loosely. They were more your friend than they were your officer.
Right.
So no, it wasn't chicken. Although we had a colonel there that was not not medical, and he gave our captain problems occasionally, but he fixed him. So.
Well, how do you fix a colonel if he's making too much trouble?
Well, we wanted a Jeep, and mainly because the hospital is in Naples, and quite often we'd go there. I would go there, the captain would go there, and then quite often we'd use it to take our girlfriends out. And we wanted to sign permanently. They wouldn't do it. They wanted us to go through the motor pool, and so Captain Sofer wrote a letter to the commanding officer of the headquarters command requesting a Jeep. He wanted the full use of it, so because he had the responsibility of quite a few thousand troops there, and that he wouldn't accept the responsibility if he couldn't have the ability to get around between Naples and Caserta. But he copied it through the colonel. That was all we needed to do, because it went to the general, but it's copied through the colonel. Well, when the colonel got it copied to him, we got our Jeep. That's the way he got around.
So if you had just gone to the colonel, he wouldn't necessarily have approved it.
He didn't approve it.
Okay.
He did not approve it. And really, in all sense, I say the girl, that was just a secondary thing. The Jeep was needed. The captain did need to be able to be mobile,
Right.
it says, and he had to get to Naples, because it's a pretty big hospital in Naples.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about sort of who else is on the base. You mentioned you shared it with the British, for instance.
Right.
What was the setup there? How much did you see of them?
Of the British, we had very little interface. We had a little problem on the road because they drove their side, we drove our side. They didn't like us too well, like it was in England, over here, overpaid and oversexed.
Right.
Then they brought some ATS, which was the British equivalent to the WAC over, and they all wanted to go with the GIs because we had more money. And they didn't like us for that reason, but they were nice people. And for the most part, we had no problem. In fact, I went to a couple parties at one of their bases, and it was nice.
All right. Now, what about the German prisoners?
They were really interesting. One that worked in my office when I first got there was named Horst Schultz. But about my age, he was a lieutenant in the German army, captured in, I believe, Africa.
Well, then he should have been a little older than you.
A little older, but I'm not sure of the capture. He was a prisoner.
But he probably, if he was held prisoner in Italy, he would have to have been captured either in Italy or
in Africa. It'd be one of the two. He taught himself English and spoke it quite well. I had pictures of him, and my neighbor got it, and when he went to Latvia and went to Germany, tried to look him up. He was from East Berlin, and he couldn't find him. But it would be almost like sitting down and talking to you how I felt about him. He was another GI. And it was with, now we had an SS driver, ambulance driver, with very close mouth, would not talk. You couldn't get close to him. And that was the difference, I think, between the regular, or the draftee and the old SS. And they were different. But their camp was great. They had, a couple times we had to go in there for some reason, I don't remember why. They got to go in our dumps, where we dump stuff, and they could take anything they wanted because we'd thrown it away. And they had our old tents, but they had put up wood siding on them, and they had put rock gardens around, and they grew vegetables. They had their own guards. They fixed refrigerators we threw away and had refrigerators. I mean, they really were living good. Good for prisoner.
Sure.
And it was after the war, so we weren't hard on the prisoners. I mean, we got them, they came on sick call also. And I think they had some, I'm not quite sure if they had German doctors there, but the emergency one, we had a burn patient and one that jumped train once and got, well, he actually was dead when we got him. He was alive, but he died. It was a Polish soldier that got run over after he jumped the train, and that was kind of sad because I took his wallet and I found a picture of a family with a wife and children, assuming it was probably his wife and probably his children. And he was a British prisoner, though, so we had to turn him over to the British. Right. So we had prisoner and we had prisoners.
Okay. Now, sort of what's the physical relationship between the prison camp and the rest of it? Were they just part of that same complex at Caserta, or were they in a different piece?
No, it was a separate compound. It was in Caserta, but it was in a different area. I can't tell you where because I don't remember, just that it was in Caserta.
Right. Okay. Now, about how often would you get into Naples?
Every weekend. And get a TDY for a couple times for a weekend in Ala Capri, which was beautiful. They had 2 hotels on there. One was enlisted men, one was a officers' hotel, Morgano and Quintana. I remember the 2 names. I think it was free to us. You know, I think we bought our food, but the room, I believe, because we were on pass, was free. We took a ship over. It was quite nice. I went over it, I think, 3 times.
What condition was Naples in at the time, physically?
When we first got there, pretty bad. A lot of people were living on the hillside in caves, but kind of it didn't get the worst. Not like Monte Cassino, which was really bad. It had a lot of damage, but it wasn't totally destroyed by any means. People lived differently there. They lived in squares in the town. And there's 4 entrances, one from each side, but basically big enough for a vehicle to go into, and then a compound in the middle of them. And one girl that worked for us in the office that lived in Naples, her folks they had a dirt floor, but they swept it. And it was clean. It was amazing to me. You could have a dirt floor and you could sweep it.
It would be hard enough packed, I guess, with people walking on it. If they kept it dry, then.
And we had a camp in Naples that my friend was in. I wasn't in it. It was a smaller one. Then we had the Air Force up on the hill at Cappuccino, that's where those buddies of mine were in that group picture. I was up at Cappuccino then. They were in the Air Force. I got transferred into the Allied Forces Headquarters Command, so I was out of the Air Force then.
All right. Now, how long did you spend in Italy then?
I came home in, I believe it was March of 47. I wrote it down. I think it was March of 47.
Okay, so a little over a year. So
a little over a year.
An extended period of time.
You had to go by points. I had to have 81 points, and then I could come home. And I shipped out of Livorno, or Leghorn, to come back. Why we went up there, I don't know. I didn't ask the Army. The Army didn't tell me why, and as they don't always tell you. And I came home on the General Blue, which was a terrible ship. It was round bottom, and it rolled all over the smooth Mediterranean that you couldn't believe.
All right, we're moving ahead of ourselves a little bit. Let's kind of go back to your stay there for a little bit longer. You mentioned at some point you got to go aboard an aircraft carrier?
Yes. Like I said, sports was emphasized, and it was one of the things they wanted us to do. We had quite a bit of sporting equipment there. And I love basketball, and I played it in school. I played Byron Center, in fact, from Wayland. And so I had formed a team in Caserta and played, and we got invited by the Navy to go on to as I recall, it was a baby carrier, they called it. It was the Roosevelt, and for a game. So the Navy invited us. I mean, we had good relations with the Navy because Navy base was pretty big in Naples. And we played in the carrier deck, hangar deck, metal floor. Backboards were dead and the floor didn't dribble back up. It was really, and we had a few whacks come along to watch us and the guys in the Navy. And then afterwards they fed us, and they fed us I mean, that was the best we had while we were in Italy. It was good. Had a lot of fun. It was nice. You know, you're in the service, but you still enjoyed life. It was fun.
Yeah, well, no one was shooting at you, and that's got
Pardon?
nobody was shooting at you,
No,
so that's got to
no,
help.
no.
All right. Now, how much did you see of the Italian civilian population?
A lot.
And what impressions did you have of them?
Nice people. Our favorite place to go in Caserta, not Naples, but Caserta, which is a different town, was a place called Tony's. Tony was a girl, I'm going to guess 15, 16, who we were told about Tony's. You could go there and get something to eat. We weren't allowed to go into the restaurants a lot because they had hanging meat, but we could go there. They had what they called eggs and chips or eggs and fries. And it was at Tony's house. It was just a room, and there'd be 4, 5, 6 GIs go in there, and they would get eggs and fried potatoes and pay for it. And the parents didn't speak English, but Tony could enough to, we got by fine. Went there quite often. It was a good break for that. And we always could talk to the kids. They all spoke English pretty well.
Right. You had more to say about that, or?
There was always kids in the camp too. We kind of adopted some of them. They would give them food, give them clothes. If they didn't steal it from you, they were pretty good at getting your watch if you weren't careful when you were walking the streets and other things.
Now, were you warned about what to do or not do when you went into Naples? I mean, was there stuff that you had to be careful about?
Well, you probably heard the war stories about the venereal diseases in the service. The only thing we were told to do is be sure and see a pro stationer come out.
Right.
No, we weren't warned. But we couldn't park a vehicle on the street because they would steal it, everything on it. In fact, I was taking one of my guys that worked for me to Naples. He was going to take a train to Switzerland. He got it. And while we were driving, some kids hopped on the back of the Jeep, no top, and undid the spare tire and stole it, and I never even knew it. And we got back there, and I had no spare tire. So I just never knew. But they were kids mostly, and I understood. I don't think none of us ever really were mad about it. We're just careful. We had to put our vehicles in a compound. Otherwise, you'd come out there to a stripped-down vehicle.
Okay. Now, were there issues, on these bases regarding discipline and things like that? Were there discipline problems with any of the soldiers? It's after the war. Why are we here? Or just people going off and doing stuff they shouldn't?
Not discipline problems in that way. No, I didn't. He's got the guys goofing off, or the guy that causes some problems. There'd be a lot of fights. We treated more fight guys than knife or something, but pretty standard. Whether you're in combat or not, you probably had the same amount of fights going on in the combat. Some guy didn't like some guy in that, but no big discipline problems. No, that I knew of. And being in a medical, if there's any harm done, we would see it.
Right.
We did get one guy that was shot, but that was an accident. Empty .45 that wasn't empty. Come off duty, and a guy's buddy shot him. And that was pretty horrendous because it's a kid I knew. He didn't die. He lived, but he was lucky. But no.
Okay. Now, did they do much? What did they sort of do for entertainment? I mean, I guess they had places you could go. They pushed sports and organized teams. Did the USO come through there or anything like that?
Yes, we had USO come in maybe 4 or 5 times while I was there. One of them was pro wrestling. A couple of them were just vaudeville type things. Yeah, it was nice. Not big, but it was nice. USO, but like I said, a lot of sports emphasis, and then there was a lot of scenic things to do. So you really didn't need a lot of extra entertainment. I did climb Mount Vesuvius because it was there, and a bunch of us, our outfit went on a weekend, and we went up. It's like climbing a big sand hill.
Right.
I went to Monte Cassino. I did want to see that, and that was really, the town of Cassino below was leveled. The Abbey was leveled too. I'm not Catholic, so I can't tell you for sure, but I don't know whether they were fathers or just what they were, or
they're monks.
Monks.
Yeah.
At the Abbey, were showing us the mosaic tile, this little 1/4-inch tile, that they were going to rebuild the monastery. I don't know if they did or not. But the Germans were so dug in, so entrenched underneath Monte Cassino, you couldn't get them out. And at Monte Cassino went straight up. And I could understand why we had such a hard time, why we finally had to bomb it, because they sat there and you couldn't get them out.
Yeah. Well, apparently they weren't using the monastery proper, but they were everywhere else.
Yeah.
And nothing else seemed to work. And they thought they were using it to spot from, but whatever. But yeah.
Yeah.
But so it's still basically in that condition at that point. And
Yeah, at that point, I have no idea. They claimed that when we were there, I think we even left a donation to them, that they were going to rebuild the abbey. And some of it that was still standing, you know, some of these arches with these mosaic tiles were beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm sure that at one time it was a gorgeous place, but they had tombs down below, and that it was interesting. And the Army, I think, encouraged history in the sense of, we went to Pompeii, for example, as a group, and which was very interesting. Rome was interesting. If you're in the arts, and I like to draw and paint, and if you're there, it's really a place to see.
Yeah. And Rome was in pretty good shape, wasn't it?
Yeah, Rome was pretty much left off the hit list in essence, and it should have been, because there was a lot of historical things there that the Colosseums. Although there was a Colosseum in Pompeii, so most of Italy wasn't really damaged. There was a few cities, like Cassino, Salerno, and other ones that when we went by Salerno, I never did figure out why, because we could see this, or why we landed there. I didn't know it was a little beach and went straight up.
Yep.
And you could see the pillboxes up above, but that's where the Army or the military decided to go in. So.
Okay. Now, to think back at the time that you spent in Italy, are there other particular incidents or things that happened that tend to come back to you as you think about that you haven't mentioned here yet?
No, not really, other than, you know, what were we here for? And I guess we were here to take care of the guys who were already here, and somebody was going to take our spot to take care of the rest of them that came in. I don't know. It was kind of a mystery. And again, if you're in the ranks I was in, you're not in the know. I mean, I'm sure there was a lot of reasons for a lot of things. It was an occupied territory, and it was an enemy originally.
Right.
So as far as I know, Naples has still got a Navy in it.
Yeah, there's still NATO bases there, and the Americans can still go there.
I don't know about I don't think they have Caserta any longer. I think they're out of there.
Right.
But I do know that Naples still has our Navy going in there.
Okay. Then during that span of the year where you're there, did the size of the base or the number of personnel change at all, do you think? Did anybody?
I don't. Number-wise, I don't know. I think it stayed about the same. The only trouble we were having then was fighting-wise, was in Trieste, where the Yugoslavs were coming across, and there was some shooting and some killing done up in there. It was a communist thing.
Right.
And we were well aware of that, but we weren't in it, of course.
Now, did the German prisoners stay there the whole time, or did they get to go home?
Well, they got to go home, which we decided they were ready to go home. At least they didn't want to go, many of them. Any of them that was in the communist zone did not want to go home. The ones that were in the other Allied areas did want to go home. This Horst Schultz was in East Berlin, and he wanted to stay in Italy.
So they did not get a choice about
They didn't get a choice.
They went.
We sent them home.
Okay.
Unless they jumped ship and just stayed there, which wouldn't have been hard, because they could have easily got out, because we really weren't guarding them. They were more or less had their own guards on their camp. I mean, the war was over.
Right.
They were prisoners, but they were better off there than they were anywhere else at the time.
Okay. Now you said they went home when they thought they were ready to go home, or it was safe to send them home. So were there some of them still there at the time when you left?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
The majority of them were still there. They'd only repatriated a few of them. Now the British also had the same thing, releasing. I don't know how they figured releasing the prisoners. I have no idea. Now in the SS, they might have held them much longer. I think some of the drafted guy got to go.
Okay. Did they segregate the SS prisoners from the other ones?
No, not in their camp. But we did, where we used German prisoners doing things, we did use them. They did kind of keep the SS away.
Because in some camps, at least in the U.S., there were concerns about the SS guys, the really strong Nazis, kind of trying to intimidate the other ones into behaving in certain ways.
I wouldn't know factually, but I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't try. They were usually the older ones, not the younger ones. The younger guys were like me, you know, and it just did their job and got caught and wanted to go home and carry on with life. And so that's basically it.
Yeah. Of course, by the time you're there, sort of the war is over and there is no more Nazi Germany, so there would have been less for the SS guys to promote at that point.
All right. I worked at Pet Milk, and we had German prisoners there working. And I don't know if you, Pet Milk in Wayland. I think about 9 come in a night shift, and I was going to school. I worked nights there because they needed help. And they had one guard, he'd sleep in the camps. They weren't going anywhere. They were happy to be there.
Well, some of those guys did stay.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, we're still Germans around here today.
In fact,
were there then.
one of the men in that group, his father lived in South Bend. He got caught in Germany, apparently back with his mother or something. I don't know what, but anyhow, or his father came over thinking to bring them, and he got caught. But no.
All right. Now, when your hitch is over and they've loaded you up on your ship and sending you back across, so you said it was not a good ship to travel in particularly. No. So was it a worse trip than the one over, or?
Oh, much worse. Not food-wise. I think we got a little more to eat. It was a huge ship, and we had wives that got married in Europe coming back on it. So there were women on the ship, although they were segregated from us. But it was a bathtub. It had taken a 47 or 48 degree list in the English Channel. Now that's rolled over, except the wave hit it and brought it back up. That's how bad it was. I was sitting in a day room, kind of a day room. It's just a big room, and there's a lieutenant playing a piano in there, and there was a huge explosion. That piano shot up to the ceiling. I scared the crap, and I hit the deck, up the stairs fast I could, and the only explanation we got was that metal, like in a can, you could pop it. Well, we'd come down, the rudders come out, and they come back down, and it just the flexing of the metal floor is all it was. But it sure scared me up. I actually thought we'd got torpedoed or got in a mine or something, but it was strictly a fluke. But no, it was. And we set out in New York Harbor overnight because it got in dark and they wouldn't bring us in. Again, going back from history books, thinking the Statue of Liberty would be the first thing because the immigrants come in, they went to the aisle. That'd be the first thing you see, be the Statue of Liberty. First thing you see is Coney Island. Then you would see the harbor, and then you'd go by the statue, way in the harbor, and Ellis Isle and Rikers Island. That it was a little surprising because I thought you'd see it coming in from Europe that first, and you didn't. We were about 20-some days coming back, not quite as long as when I went over. Right. Europe was still a long ways off in those days.
Yeah. All right. Now, when you got there, did they process you pretty quickly and just send you home, or?
They immediately took us by convoy to Fort Dix, New Jersey, and I think within a week we were processed, got our ruptured ducts and our pay. And I didn't salute the captain the last day, and he chewed me out and said, "You're not out of the Army yet." I was actually I had leave time, so technically I was still in the Army. So I got chewed out the last day I was in the service. Typical me.
All right. Now, what'd you do once you got back home?
Worked for Pet Milk for just a short time. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. Then a buddy that was in the Pacific of mine, Dick Sulkirk, and I got together and we played some ball, and so we decided to go to New York City to see a showgirl he knew, and then head for Florida for the winter. We had nothing to do. We were kind of roaming the country, so we drove to Florida and came back home and I dated a girl, met somewhere, and all of a sudden I got a blind date with my wife, and that ended it. It was it. And then I went to art school under GI Bill. GI Bill has treated me very well. Any GI that's been in has been taken well care of, and to this day still.
Where did you go for art school?
Kendall.
Okay.
It was a little house on the hillside. First year commercial art. and it was very poor. Actually had no use in today's world. But I always wanted to be an artist, and so that's what I did. And I kind of stayed in that field until 1960. I went to work for Spartan Stores, and I was a director of graphic arts and printing at Spartan Stores until I retired. And then I spent 10 years consulting in the graphic arts afterwards. So I pretty much followed that career all the way through. I wanted to draw since I was a kid.
Right. Okay. So to look back on the whole thing now, what sort of effect do you think your time in the service had on you?
Had on me?
Yeah.
I think I grew up. Probably the most thing I could say, I grew up. I went in as a kid, and I come out probably as a kid because I was only 19, but I had grown up. I'd seen a lot of things, seen a lot of the world, and I thought I was ready. I didn't go home ever again. I mean, I lived away from home from then on. I had got my independence, as might say, and so it was a growing experience and it was a learning experience.
And did you learn things that wound up being useful to you then as you kind of went out and made your career?
In the service, yeah, leadership skills. I think probably the main thing. Dealing with people above you and people below you. Yeah, I'd say both of those were something I learned in the service. Although you learn that in high school too, particularly if you play sports. You have a coach, you have a teamwork, and then you have your other stuff. But the military is a great place to. It's a make or break you. Is really what it is. You either make it or it'll break you. And I'd say 99% of the guys it makes.
Yeah, well, they have
maybe that 1% that doesn't.
Yeah, well, they have a real vested interest in making sure you do make it. All right.
I'd say it was, yeah, I wanted out, but I would say in retrospect, I often wondered why I didn't stay in. Because it would have been a great career. And I had possibly could have went quite a ways, possibly. So, it was one of those things, I don't know.
All right. Well, in the meantime, it makes for a pretty good story. So thanks for coming in and telling it to me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm not sure it's worth anything, but it was enjoyable.
All right. Okay. That's a wrap then.